All right, here we go, live for the first time in I think 2 weeks, because I didn't go live at all last week. I've been flooded with work. So if you've been following along with these live streams, you know that I'm working on a play at the moment. You also probably know that that script for the play just got a massive rewrite. And I've got it. It's incredible. I am so thrilled about the rewrite. I loved the story when it first started, but now seeing this latest edition, I think this is something special. Tricky part is I now have less than half the time I started with to write a completely new soundtrack. And I'm sorry if you can hear that squeaking noise. My computer is on the struggle bus lately. I think it's the hard drive or maybe one of my fans or something is making a squeaking noise as it spins. So hopefully that doesn't get on anyone's nerves. But, yeah, today I am taking a break from writing the soundtrack and working on my new class to kind of talk with you guys again. So I'm excited about that. So welcome, Adol. Welcome. All right, so that reminds me. Let's get the lesson plan with you guys. Lesson plan. There we go. I just put that in the comments. It's in the description of the video, but I added it so late, and I'm not sure if everyone has access to it. So if you would like to, you are more than welcome to follow along. If you've been to these lessons before, you kind of know the idea. I've got a lesson plan. It's got notes and everything so that after this video lesson, you guys can review it. And the topic for today's video is essentially the basic premise behind emotions in music. I know it's talked about writing 3 types of sad music, and we will be doing that because we're going to use those as an example for creating, for following these premises. But it's a pretty short and kind of to the point kind of lesson. And the idea is this elusive concept of emotion and music. And everyone wants to know templates. How do you do sad music? How do you do tragic music? How do you do angry music is one that I get quite often. And angry is a very difficult emotion to capture because it's incredibly context specific. In fact, I have an entire week in the class I'm making dedicated to teaching anger. In fact, that's the week I just finished actually typing up and putting into the website. That one gave me a lot of issues, just kind of figuring out how to teach it. I'm going on a tangent right now, sorry. But the idea is that I always get these questions about how do you perform blank emotion. And I've shared different tools in the past. And some people have loved them, I love them, but some people find that they're a little too difficult. So I've been trying to find a way to kind of narrow down the scope of these tools and make them a little bit more applicable. And what I basically came down to is the basic premise of how do you scribe an emotion. There are a lot of different models, but there's one I personally love for applying to music, which is called the circumplex model of effect. Let me write this down so you guys can follow along. So there's a model called the circumplex model of effect. And basically, what this entire model says is that every emotion can be described by 2 things. The first one is something called valence, and we'll call the other one arousal, which is the official term in like the psych tool. Now the idea is valence equals how pleasant / unpleasant is the emotion. So there's a nice long sliding scale. On the opposite end, on one end you've got complete misery. On the other end you've got just bliss, complete rapture. You're super excited. All right, so in musical terms, we can describe this. We'll get about this in a second. The next one is arousal equals intensity. How intense is the emotional experience itself? In other words, is this the kind of annoyance where it annoys you but you're able to move on with your day? Or is this the kind of thing that really, really bugs you and you start to see red and you can't think about anything else? This is the only thing you're focusing on. But this model basically explains that if you can figure out how pleasant or unpleasant an emotion is, and you can describe how intense that experience is, you've got a pretty strong description of that emotion. Now, the beautiful thing for us is that we can translate this to music. So in music, we can consider valence equals how dark or bright does your music sound. And we'll call arousal equals how much energy does your music contain. So if you can figure out, basically, if you've got an emotion you want to portray in music, you can start by figuring out, all right, how negative or positive is this emotion? If it's sadness, it's going to be pretty negative, right? It's going to be fairly dark musically. That's going to be things like minor keys. My hands just kind of ultimately... That was Dorian, technically, not minor. But you can get these... kind of focusing on like the key of A minor. You can pick any minor key, any minor mode you want to work with, but you focus on darker harmonies. And then if you want the energy, you have to think, how intense is this emotion? Basically, how intense do you want the emotional experience to be? Is this you just got bad news that you didn't win the lottery? Or is this you just found out your best friend is in the hospital kind of bad news? But you want to take the time to describe your emotion first. And then if you can have that description, it's significantly easier to try and translate that into an emotion. And beyond that, you start to learn how you can take an initial emotion and start to manipulate it by changing how dark it sounds or how much energy you have. So, for example, let's take a closer look at sadness. So here, I've got all these notes. You can follow along. I added the link in the comments and in the description of the video. You want to right-click that and open it in a new tab. Welcome, Matt. Welcome, Adol. So the idea is if we want to portray sad music, you're going to find the notes here as well. All right, is what I was going to say. I've got the notes. You can follow along if you'd like to. We're going to start talking about how this strategy can be applied to sad music. And the basic idea here is fairly simple. Oh, it's over here. So if we keep this in mind, we'll start by describing sadness. All right. So valence, like basically, remember, valence is how dark, how negative, how unpleasant is this? I'd say this is pretty negative. Sadness is fairly negative. There are worse things you can feel, but I'm just going to say fairly negative / dark. All right. And then arousal, which we shall for now on call energy, so that there's no confusion. Energy, how intense is this emotion? I'd say sadness is, I'd say, fairly intense, but you gotta think of it almost kind of like a lower energy. You can think of it like how much energy do you have as you experience this emotion. And if you think about sadness and happiness and positive emotions and negative emotions, pretty much in the human experience, we associate positive emotions with high energy and negative emotions with low energy. There are, of course, exceptions, but this is kind of how our bodies reflect energy. If you're sprinting, that's a high energy, you have a very fast heart rate. Higher energy. If it's lower energy, your heart rate comes back down. You can think about the way we express emotions. Positive emotions are associated with celebrations, with dancing, with moving, with shouting, all kinds of high energy things. Whereas if you are feeling pretty down, pretty negative, you're dragging your feet, you're talking a little slower, you're slumping in your chair. There's an overall feeling of lower energy. So here I would describe this as lower energy. All right? Now I will say moderately low energy, because we're not talking about complete despair. Moderately low energy. So if we can describe sadness as this, as pretty dark and moderately low energy, what our task is, how do we portray this in our music? So valence is pretty simple. You have two big strategies. One, focus on minor harmonies. And two, portraying, I should say, dark valence. Because a happy valence would be different. I'm going to focus on minor harmonies, and I'm going to focus on darker intervals. On darker intervals in the melody. All right, so if we're going to work for kind of basic sadness, let's do a slower tempo. Let's say like what? We'll say like 70. That's about right. It's a bit slower. And I've got this profile over here that you guys can follow along with that I already kind of pre-typed up. But so for basic sadness, we're going to say stick to a slow tempo around 60 to 85 BPM, so I'm going to do 70. Work with mostly quarter notes and eighth notes in the melody, and focus on just one chord per measure or less. This is how we're going to manipulate the energy. To manipulate our valence, we're going to focus on darker intervals in the melody and minor chords and keys. So let's try to mimic that, shall we? Let's do... One second, let me make sure I'm not hiding the comments. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. My brain is pretty much fried, which is why I'm focusing on this topic, because it's the only topic I've been focusing on literally all week. And so yeah, I'm kind of on autopilot at the moment. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Let's see here. Let's focus on just a nice, simple one chord per measure chord progression. Oops. Alright. Yeah, you can tell I'm kind of off at the moment. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. I don't like that C minor. I'm going to change that. So what I've done is I've just written a chord progression in the key of A minor. I took one chord from outside of the key, which was C minor. I didn't care much for the sound. What happened to my A minor? At the very beginning. There we go. That should take care of it. But we've got an A minor. We've got an E minor. We have F major. Then we have a C major. A minor, E minor, F major, then A minor again. So this is a pretty simple chord progression in the key of A minor. We have one chord per measure, which is what we said we would be working with in here. We have one chord per measure or less. We have a low tempo around 70 BPM. We're focusing on minor keys. Let's now focus on a melody, shall we? All right, so what we're going to do is, if you've been on this channel for any long periods of times, you kind of already know what my strategy for writing melodies is. I'm going to start with I'm going to start with just chordal tones at first. I'm going to focus on the first two measures. I'm going to use these to build a motif. And if we look back at our notes again, you'll see that I've pointed out that when you're working on your melody, I want to focus on mostly quarter notes and eighth notes. So I can do longer, but these are the basic kind of like energy levels I want to go with. So I'm going to cut this down to eighth notes. I'm going to see if there are any interesting kind of rhythmic ideas I can do. So our shortest subdivision is a quarter note, or eighth notes. We've got quarter notes, then we've got half notes, dotted quarter notes, all that stuff. So the idea here is that our shortest notes are not any faster than an eighth note or quarter note. So we're working well. Matt asks, how goes the play? Pretty good. I am exhausted. Been working on the play a lot. I have the new script printed out because the whole play got reworked. I've been working on this since about like 3 months now. I had all the themes sketched out. I had all my arrangements planned, and I had done a couple arrangements with you guys on here. They went well, and then the writer and the director completely changed the story, which is fine. That's not unheard of. And actually, after getting the script, I'm super excited because this story is even better. And I love the story. I've already read it multiple times. I only just got the script yesterday. And so I'm meeting with the writer tonight, and we're going to have a nice long talk. We're going to go in depth on exactly where he wants music in the play. Basically, doing an actual spotting process. Where does he want music? How long is it supposed to be? What role does the music need to play? Get very specific with what he expects out of this so that it makes my job easier. Because now I have a very limited amount of time to essentially have like 2.5 months to write an entire soundtrack from scratch again. I'm probably going to be able to salvage the same themes that I wrote. Just they're going to be very different styles. Instead of being a more hybrid kind of synth kind of soundtrack, this one is going to be much more traditional orchestral type sounds. That being said, there's also going to be a lot of trippy sound design in a couple of scenes that I am going to be responsible for creating. So I'm super excited, also super stressed, but enjoying it. It's kind of the life of being a composer, right? And on top of that, I'm also working on this little beauty over here. All right, so this is my class. All right, you can enroll. This is the beta test. This is me basically spending a 6-week class sharing everything I know about emotions and music. And this is combining both my backgrounds as a trained therapist with a master's degree in social work and a professional composer, and kind of marrying those two fields together to kind of teach a bit of emotional theory, kind of what I'm touching on in this video, and then actually going much, much more in depth on actually applying everything. So here we're kind of just keeping vague terms, talking about how, all right, you define things by energy and valence, follow that instinctively. In the class, that's going to be a lot more specific, all right? I provide specific tools to find the exact energy level of the music you're writing, the exact energy level of the emotion you're trying to portray, strategies for valence, how do you get the precise dark sound you're looking for, or the bright sound you're looking for, and beyond that, going into more things like, okay, what happens if you don't know how to describe your emotion? How can you create that description and make sure that it's solid? And all kinds of cool stuff. It's been hectic putting it all together because I'm basically taking everything that comes instinctively and having to find out how to teach it. But I'm loving it. It's almost like writing a thesis again. But let's see here. Which, oddly enough, I enjoyed writing my thesis in both grad school and undergrad. I loved research. I thought research was what I was going to do for the rest of my life before I found out that I could actually follow music. Let's see. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this motif, and we're going to use a very simple formula, or structure is what they're called in music. And yes, structure and formulas in music are incredibly important. And I have plenty of videos talking about this. This one that we're going to work with is something called sentence structure, or prevade. We start by presenting the idea, and we are going to repeat the idea with minimal change, basically just enough to make it fit over the new chord. In fact, let's see. How does this fit over the new chord? I don't think it will, but we can try because my brain is too fried to kind of look at it intellectually. Okay, so this first chord works. Let's do... This one does not, because C and B, if you minimize that, forms a minor second. If you expand it, you get a major seventh, all right? Which is still a very, very dissonant interval. So we want to smooth this out. I don't want to go to C, because that would be... Actually, maybe we could just do C. Repeat C. So now we've got a nice initial idea. We repeat the idea with just enough variation to make it fit. Now we are going to create a strong variation by basically taking the most interesting part of our motif and repeating it. So let's go with C. Actually, you know what? Let's do A. Let's try one of those, shall we? Does this work? G, B, E. and then we just kind of end it with a cadence. The way you create a cadence in your melody is you figure out, where do I want to end? I'm going to say let's end on this C. We kind of create just a very simple ending, and then we just connect them. Let's see here. So this is going to be an F major. Alright, so now we've got a functioning melody. We have our local peak. We have our structure. But it doesn't sound all that sad, even though we have an underlying minor chord progression. And we're going to explain why in just a second. Let's just listen to the whole thing first. Alright, so not the prettiest melody I've ever written, but it works. Let's figure out why it doesn't actually sound sad, though. So, when you're writing a sad melody, the key to sad melodies. Alright, there are essentially a handful of different intervals you want to try and emphasize. It doesn't mean you can only use these, but if you're able to, you'll want to. Alright, so let's see, we've got minor and major seconds. Minor thirds. Oops. Perfect fourths. Minor sixths. And minor sevenths. These are all most of the minor and kind of darker intervals. We have a minor second. We have a major second. We have a minor third. We have a perfect fourth. We have a minor sixth, which is, oops, that's a major sixth. We want a minor sixth. There we go. And then we want a minor seventh. Alright, so these are kind of the intervals that we want to try and emphasize in our melody if you want to make it a bit darker. So we've got A to B, that's a major second, that works. Then we've got a B to D, that's a minor third, that also works, major second, good. Basically, I'm trying to find any kind of overly happy intervals. So that one works. That one, that's a perfect fifth. Let's see if we can switch that to a perfect fourth. Alright, so we've got C major over here, under here. To make a perfect fourth, we could do D to A. So, instead of C major, what if we change this chord? We went A minor, E minor, we go F major, and then what if we did D minor? We could probably do that. And what allows this to work is the fact that we have so many chordal tones in common. Alright, so even though this doesn't form a particularly strong pattern, it still forms a pattern because we have two common tones. Oops. So now we've got a slightly darker sounding melody. Now a C does not belong to it. What if we do a B? That would probably clash still. Not particularly. So now we've got this kind of darker melody undergoing underneath it. If you wanted to create something a bit kind of moodier, we could start adding some more arpeggios underneath it. You can kind of tell I'm not a piano player, but I don't know. My brain is completely fried, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not entirely all in it today. But it's been so long since I've done a stream that I wanted to do something today. Let's see here. But we'll stick to this. We've got this basic idea. Let's double check major second. B to D, that's a minor third. Major second, major second, major second. E to B is going to be a perfect fourth. Major second, no, minor second, minor second, major second. Okay, so we're good so far. Minor third, major second. So we got a lot of major seconds in here. D to F is a minor third. Yeah, we're doing good. We don't have too many bright intervals in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to mute this, crank it up an octave, and just kind of record this into the sound. Alright, so then the basic idea is now that we have a fairly generic kind of sad-ish sound, we can then manipulate the level of the sadness, kind of the intensity of the sadness, by manipulating the amount of energy behind all of this. So what if we kind of repeat this? And we try to make it a bit more high intensity, more tragic sounding. I've already done a kind of a short video. I think I talked about this in a stream before. But we go... What if we just kind of do one of those? We create a pulse. We can add a bit more energy, which is going to change the intensity of the emotion. Alright, this is... Here we go. And then we'll kind of just cut these up. Anyone have any more questions? I feel like I'm just kind of sleepwalking on here at the moment. Sorry about that. Oh, my word. But I'm here. There we go. Let's see here. I'm here. I'm doing what I love. I'm alive. There is so much to be grateful for. Why did that not... There we go. Let me say, why did it not quantize? Alright, so it's the same exact idea, but you're going to notice that it does have heavier energy. In fact, if we wanted to completely go even heavier and bigger energy, what we could simply do is add a bass line. So I'm not following the bass line. So let's do this. Okay, so it's A minor. Then it goes E minor. Alright, let's do that. So focusing on the roots and fifths in the bass line. I made a few mistakes here and there, but let's lower the velocity here because that was a bit strong. We're going to, where did I make my mistakes? I think that was 1. So it looks like my shortest one, the interval I was using was quarter notes. Let's make sure that this is all. There we go. D. All right, so let's listen to this again one more time. wanted to make this even bigger, we'll delete this because that was a different velocity. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the melody, we're going to copy it, and we're going to paste it. And we're going to see what kind of a dramatic impact this has on it to create a more kind of grief-stricken, kind of tragic sound. And Matt asks, do you focus on CRs to evoke emotions? For example, one major major chord triad separated from a minor triad by a minor third triad. Interval. So what that sounds like is going to be major triad separated from a minor triad by the interval of a minor third. So we've got an F major. If we go up a minor third, we get that'd be an A flat minor. So we have F major. That's a very dark, kind of ominous sounding CR. And a CR is a chord relationship, basically kind of emotions evoked by just two specific chords used back to back. And the answer is yes. Sometimes I do. I don't always emphasize. I will use CRs generally as a source of inspiration. So I've mentioned multiple times on this channel that my absolute favorite CR is the minor triad, separated from a major triad by a perfect fourth. I just love that sound. And I use it in a lot of my music. It's very inspiring for me. And I'll use that when I'm struggling for ideas. And sometimes I'll use CRs when I'm going for a specific emotion. But generally, I'll try to move beyond such a simple strategy, because those are very powerful strategies. But the problem with trying to think of what chords can I use to make a sad theme, or how do I write a sad melodies, the issue with these questions, even though they've got their heart in the right place, is they're very limited. All right, music consists of 9 basic parameters. All right, tempo, timbre, texture, rhythm, register, harmony, pitch, articulation. And what's the last one I'm missing? 9th. Dynamics, I think. I believe it's dynamics. Yeah. I think that's the one I didn't say. But there's all these different parameters in music, and the trick to portraying emotions isn't to focus on just any one of them, but to find a way to use all of them to kind of create this sense of how dark or bright is your emotion and how energetic is your emotion. So, case in point here. Here we have the same exact theme, and yet the types of emotions, while related, are separate. Here we have a very simple, basic, sad idea. Here we have focused on creating a dark valence, which means we're trying to make it sound dark. All right? We're making it sound dark by focusing on a minor key and focusing on darker intervals in the melody. Now, if we want to make this from basic sadness to something much stronger, like tragedy or grief, that's a much more intense emotion. So we have to use strategies to add energy. So here we've doubled the melody in octaves. That adds energy. We've swapped out our sustained chords for repeated chords, or rhythmic chords, which adds energy. And here we've added another layer, a bass line, also doubled in octaves. All of these things add energy. And even though we're using the exact same chord progression and the exact same melody, the types of emotions are not identical. One definitely feels much larger, more intense than the other. And the same can be done in the opposite direction. If we wanted to, we could take this entire thing, our same original emotion, and we can swap it. We can, instead of making it more intense, we can make it less intense. We can make it sound a little bit more nostalgic. Let me see. Yusuf. Hi, your video about CRs inspired me a lot. JJ Berthum made a series about it too, called Harmonic Relativity, but I don't find anything on Google talking about it. Is it something kind of niche theory? Thank you, Yusuf. I really appreciate that. I also love JJ Berthum's channel. He has a fantastic playlist on melody writing, if anyone is interested. So, the term you are looking for, people call it harmonic relativity, some people call it chord relationships, but what it's based off of is something called Neo-Riemannian theory. Let me look this up for you. Neo-Riemannian theory. No, I spelled that terribly wrong. Neo-Riemann theory. This is what you want to look up. All right, so this type of theory is essentially what chord relationships are. It's an experimental, kind of more modern, it's still quite old, but it's a more modern approach to harmony, which instead of relating chords based around a tonal center, instead of saying, oh, key of C major, all of these chords are related to each other based off how they all try to pull you back to C. Instead, it says, let's just focus on chord to chord. All right, how do these two chords relate to each other? How do these two chords relate to each other? There's a lot of fascinating stuff you can find on YouTube if you Google this. If you're not up for a very difficult read, there's a book called Hollywood Harmony. It was, I believe, a PhD dissertation published in book form with the Oxford Publishing Company. It's a fascinating field of study. It's got a lot of really cool ideas. And that's essentially what CR. So if you want to look up more about it, that's what you're going to want to look up, essentially. Whew. All right, keep the questions coming, guys. I'm starting to focus a little bit more. It's helping. Good to know this theory. I will definitely look into it. Thank you, Adol. Yes. So where were we? Basic sadness. Made it higher with energy. Reduce the energy. All right, sorry. Like I said, my brain is all over the place today. It's kind of been all over the place all week, actually. Let's see. So what we can do is if we wanted to take this and make it sound more nostalgic, something we could very simply do right away is swap out the 1 chord per measure rule and switch it to 1 per 2. So let's mute this E minor. We'll drop it just so we don't delete it. I don't like deleting stuff. And we'll just lengthen A minor. Something else we can do is we can turn this into a 7th chord. We can do a 7th chord, and then this is going to be a little tricky. So instead of dropping the chord, let's raise the melody, shall we? Let's take the melody. We're going to raise it an octave to make it a little bit brighter. We are going to make this a 7th chord again. So now what we've got is and then we can create, so we've got A minor. At this point, I'm just kind of throwing things together. So let's see this. Let's shorten all of these. We'll just go straight to F major, and we'll make it F major 7. So now what we've got is kind of this more... So 7th chords are kind of like the masters of creating ambiguous soundtracks, because a 7th chord contains both a minor triad and a major triad. So you put them together, they're a lot more ambiguous. You're not quite sure what to associate it with. So if we take these emotions and we make an entire chord progression, and I accidentally flipped my sustain pedal upside down. So you get A minor 7, F major 7, and you're just kind of moving back and forth a little bit. And in fact, that's what we'll just do. We'll delete these, we'll copy and paste, and then we'll make any adjustments we need to in our melody above it. And if we really wanted to, something else we could do is we could get rid of our 8th notes and make this move much slower. At least not all of them, not all of our 8th notes, but we can get rid of a good chunk of them. And in fact, let's just kind of, what we're going to do, we're going to quantize this to make it fit a bit better. We'll delete that. We'll leave that one. Stretch that one. We'll leave that because this is the more, in fact, let's leave this because that's the more interesting part. And so now we have kind of this. Let's bring this chord out here a bit earlier. You know what, let's just leave the melody the way it was. I kind of like it better that way. Yeah, so essentially what we've got going on is we've got 3 variations of the exact same piece. Every single one of them have the same melody and have the same basic harmony. The only thing that we're really changing is the energy level. We're making it bigger or smaller, and as you can see, that creates a different kind of emotional feel out of it. The one difference is we are changing the harmonic language here from strictly triads to 7th chords. But the main impact is still energy. We're going from 1 chord per measure to just 1 chord every 2 measures. So now we have one simple idea that was initially meant to be sad. And by just manipulating our energy, we're able to get a lot more mileage out of it, get a lot more nuance, because we're trying to follow that description of how intense and how positive or negative is your emotion. And then we increase the energy to create something a bit more dramatic and tragic sounding. Same exact melody, same exact harmony. All we did is doubled up a couple more octaves, added a bit more rhythms, and introduced a 3rd layer, the bass line. All of which impact the energy or the intensity of the emotion. And then bringing it all the way back down, we have a marginally more nostalgic and kind of lower energy sound. Again, same exact melody. Didn't change a thing about the melody. We just focused on changing the harmony and the energy level. Alright, so with that, my brain is fried, my friends. All right, I'm sorry. I was hoping I would have a bit more energy to do this, but I'm probably going to call it short. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to address them before I go. If you're looking for something more eloquent, I had a bit more energy when I put together the lesson plan. You can follow this along, get some ideas. This probably will not be the last time I do a topic like this. All right, this entire year, I plan on going much more in-depth on creating emotional profiles, sharing strategies for getting the most mileage out of your themes, all that kind of really cool stuff. And if you don't want to wait, if you want to check it out and see a much more better put together, head on his shoulders type lesson taught by me, I do have that class starting January 30th. There are 4 spots still open. Once they're gone, my friends. All right, so grab them. Otherwise, the next one will not be back for several months, I believe. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to, every class starts with weekly modules, so you can learn. For example, I think actually we can pull it up what it's going to look like. It's still a work in progress, so bear with me. I have everything written out. At this point, it's just formatting, basically. Putting the formatting together, making sure everything looks the way I want it to look, making sure I'm putting the videos together, all that kind of cool stuff that I enjoy doing. Yusuf, awesome, great. I'm glad that you're looking forward to the read. It is a good book. It can be dry at times and overly academic, as is the case with most PhD dissertations. But if you can get through it and actually learn from it, it's fantastic. That's one thing I always had an issue with dissertations and theories and everything, theses and everything, like grad school. Everything was so terrible. I remember I had one professor who had a really good point. She said that the future of research, if we really want to make it accessible to everyone, we should focus on a 7th grade reading level when you write academic papers. Something where it's complex enough to get the ideas across effectively, and not so basic that you're like insulting the people reading it or you're hurting your own ideas. Let's see here. All right, so this is not the view I wanted. Let's see here. Let's see, preview. Participant view. All right, so here is a view of what the class is looking like so far. So you sign in. It's going to be hosted on my website. Every week you learn about the class. You're going to have different modules. So you have the introduction to the class. We have a basics on how we describe emotions. There's going to be videos for all of these. Strategies for the planning, how they different work. And then you get basically different modules every week. This first one is basically strategies for manipulating overall energy and a tool that I've designed to help measure your energy, final thoughts, all that really cool stuff. Every week there's going to be a combination of articles and lesson and videos and samples. And then to top it all off, every week there will also be live videos and classes where I will talk about the material covered in the week and answer any questions. Those are not determined yet. Those are going to be the kind of things where we pick a time to meet in the first week. We're going to figure out what time works best for everyone. And then if you can't make it, all the videos will be recorded and emailed to all of the students so that you can keep those in perpetuity or whatever the word is. Basically, they're yours to keep. You can watch them, you can read, you can revisit them, you can take notes, all that kind of stuff. But with that in mind, my brain is fried. I need to go out for a walk. I need to eat, and I need to get back to work. It has been a couple weeks of very, very, very long days, my friends. But it's all stuff I love to do. All right. So thank you. Sorry I wasn't too with it today. I hope it was still able to learn something. I hope you still kind of got the idea. The biggest takeaway behind all of this, if I had to summarize it, if you want to write emotional music, you need to start by describing your emotion. Because if you don't know what you're translating, you're not going to be able to translate it. So when you're describing your emotion, at the very least, try to describe its valence, which means how pleasant or unpleasant is the emotion. All right? And then, however pleasant or unpleasant the emotion is, you want to try and mimic that by creating brighter or darker harmonies and melodies. Then, after that, after you describe how unpleasant or pleasant your emotion is, focus on describing how intense the emotion is. How much energy do you associate with that emotion? If you can figure that out, then you can match that energy with your musical energy as well. And energy is really going to be the strongest tool you have at your disposal. And the golden rule for energy is anytime you've added something new to your music, it increases the energy. So here, we took the whole thing, we took the chords, we made it rhythmic, we doubled the melody in octaves, we added a bass line and doubled that in octaves, and that's how we got a bunch of energy. Yeah, hopefully that helps. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I will be getting back to my regular streaming schedule hopefully this week. And then in April is when I should be getting back finally to posting actual videos. Things that are thought out, planned, prepped a bit better than me just sitting down and going on an ADHD fueled rant. But thank you everybody. I hope you found this helpful. Until next time, my friends, keep studying, keep writing, working hard, and keep writing new music. I will see you in the next video. All right? Have a great day. Bye-bye.